Good morning, beloveds. I wanted to come in today and go more deeply into this week's topic that is all about letting go of trying to find your purpose. And this may be a radical idea because everyone out there who's in the coaching and spiritual realms often is trying to help you find your purpose. And most of my clients that come to me or beloveds in my community come in, that's what they're seeking. And the very first thing I say to them is that's not what you're going to do with me. And of course I explain why, and it's, a little cheeky, but it's not radical to me, but maybe radical to some, that this idea of finding your purpose, and I'll explain why I don't use that term very often, and why I feel like it's actually a huge waste of time and energy. Mostly because it's not a finding process. It's a remembering process, in my view. I do believe that we are all born with our soul knowing exactly what we are here to do. And then through divine cosmic jokes, life experiences, you name it, external stories for sure, parents, the school systems, perhaps religious constructs, societal, overculture, we begin to forget. And then we spend this inordinate amount of time trying to find some purpose, when the truth is our life is the purpose. And when we spend all this time and energy seeking it, we miss out on the magic that is right in front of us. And so I'm going to speak to that because, when I say that to those that I sit in one-on-one with, if they're seeking out, finding their path, finding their purpose, and sometimes it's about work, and often it's also about their spiritual path and so on. When I say to them, well, we're not going to find anything. We're going to remember what's right here. That that of course doesn't make them feel any better, because there's still a deep desire to get clarity on what, this purpose is. And the reason I often don't use the word purpose or do this process of finding it is because it has shifted for many of us to feel as though purpose only relates to our vocation and our career, and it does not look at our entire lives. And so if we feel like we're not living that purpose as a career, as a vocation, that something is missing. Or, if we're working a job that perhaps we don't feel is part of our purpose, we're often very unhappy, and yet we're spending perhaps 8+ hours a day there. And so for me, I call it more like your sacred assignment. What did your soul come here to do, to act out in this version of the humanity that you came here in this time around? And so we want to look at the assignment in ancient traditions, yogic traditions, that's often called dharma. And so I say, let's let go of this idea of purpose, and that it does not just encompass your vocation and your career. But once you understand and come into clarity what your assignment is, and you bring that essence and that energy into whatever it is you do to sustain yourself financially, it shifts how you approach your work, whatever that work is. Again, I mentioned it, women for sure, because that's what comes to me mostly, but men as well spend an inordinate amount of time and energy looking external to themselves for this purpose, when the truth is it's already inherent within us. And when we're consistently, looking outside, doing all, the self-help, whatever it is, you're missing the present moment and the magic that's in your life, even when those times may not seem magical. The shadow stories, the other things, it's not to discount any of that. In fact, I work very deeply with helping my beloveds transmute those stories into the gifts and the wisdom that they have given to us. And part of my big shadow story, Dark Night of the Soul, was this idea of constantly trying to find a purpose and getting the assignment wrong, if you will. I don't even like to use the word wrong, but I was chasing this assignment when it really was like right here in front of me the entire time. And so part of this is embracing life as an organic unfolding, because we are in the mystery. And so much of my dark night of the soul was around controlling everything and controlling how I showed up in the world in the way that I thought the world wanted to see, as opposed to a deep marriage between what's going on inside and what's going, what I bring outside of myself. The idea, I feel, and people, you can correct me if I'm completely off base. I don't mind getting that kind of feedback. But this is through my own experience, that the idea of finding your purpose, this notion of it, is that until you do, you are in some way not whole, or you are in some way not living your life in the way that it was meant to, or that something is lacking. And that's just simply not true. We come onto the planet as divine, whole beings, and beautiful beings at that. And, the notion that you don't have a purpose, or you don't know what it is, or all of those things, ends up leaving us feeling like our life is purposeless. And that, again, is so far from the truth. And we go out and we're trying to search this elusive one thing we should be doing. And I talk with my clients on that all of the time, particularly because most of you, I know right here, are wisdom seekers. You have a lot of knowledge. You are Renaissance women. You've taken a lot of courses. You've received a lot of wisdom. You've through life experience and taking courses. And I get this whole, but that's not the thing. I took that course and I spent that money, and it's still not the one thing that you want to present out into the world. And I have to tell everyone, stop. You and how you show up are the one thing. Everything else are tools in how you express that one thing that is you to the world, to be in service. Because if there's anything I know for sure about, I believe all of humanity, but for sure the women that are in my community, you, my one-on-one clients, everyone, our big overarching purpose is often to be, and I witnessed it the other day on a call, to be in service and of service, and to make an impact in some way. But what begins to happen is that idea of being in service gets distorted because of all of the experiences, all of the external stories. And we often move from being in service to being in servitude, often through our own inner stories. And so there is a huge difference there. And I go more deeply into that when I work with people on their sacred assignment work. And we also often discount and forget that first, we're in service to the divine as a vessel, and then secondarily, or really in a marriage, in service to self, first and foremost. And then from there, we create the ripple effect that goes out. And so and we're here as pure expressions of love, like in its very simplest form. And then everything else just becomes an expression of that if we allow it to be. And so I consider we're all here to be in service, to be pure love, without bypassing the shadow aspects, because all of our assignments also tend to have a shadow aspect to them. And the assignment, your soul assignment, your sacred assignment, your soul curriculum is, then becomes the essence of how you are to do that, how you are to live your life in service according to your dharma. And then you have the gifts, skills, traits, archetypes, personalities, s- tools, knowledge, wisdom. All of that becomes your expression of that assignment that infuses itself into every aspect of your life, not just um, how you get your paycheck or how you're sustained. And that's the piece then that makes you unique from every other being that is here on the planet to be in service. Um, and so that's kind of my wisdom on the sacred assignment and why I feel like um, spending time and energy going to find some purpose is really constantly has us on the hamster wheel all the time. Because if suddenly we're doing something in the external world and it's no longer in resonance with us, then we feel like we're going right back to square one. Oh, that wasn't my purpose. Let's start this train all over again. And we don't need to do that. We just don't. We need to realize what our assignment is here. We need to honor where we are and what we want to share in that moment and know that that's just an expression at that point in time, and that you may choose then to deepen into something else or show up in a different part of your essence, in a different part of all of the archetypes that make you up. And so, there's no need to like kind of go back to square one and let's find this purpose again because maybe my career changed. No, we don't need to do that. So we miss all the magic of the everyday. And I'll touch on this a little briefly as an example and as a story. And I heard it again recently, and I know this person, and I can probably guess what her sacred assignment is, but a very personal story. Like I mentioned, I went through some real dark nights of the soul, and I think for those of us who are mothers, and we all are in some way, whether we have biological children or not, but for those of us who do, and often, especially if we stayed home with our kids, which happened to me and was never my intention. And so at the time, I did not honor, and I'm going to be truthful here, I did not honor motherhood as the sacred work that it is. And at the time, I did not know, or I wasn't very clear on what my sacred assignment was. And so I spent a lot of time, and I missed out probably on many moments with my son, constantly going, well, what's my purpose? What's next? I was already looking at what was next for when he grew up, and went off to school. And in my mind, I didn't know what that was. Instead of showing up with what my assignment actually was during that time of my life, that cycle of where I was with being a mother. And now that, of course, looking back, I know better. I'm like, there are some regrets there. There's a little bit of grief. And a good example is I know many of you have the assignment of teacher, for example. But maybe you weren't designed perhaps to teach in a school setting, but you want to teach others your wisdom, much like I do. And what I've noticed for those of you who are teachers who are also in a period of time in your life where your main role is as mother, you are raising children, you're not honoring the fact that you're there to teach them. And that is very much part of your sacred assignment. And so you struggle and stress over making an impact outside of outside of yourself as teacher, and then outside of your nuclear family, because many of us just want to make an impact in the larger grand scheme and scope of the world. But the truth is there's no more sacredness than showing up fully as teacher, because when we impact our young ones, we impact and have the ripple effect, for many generations going forward. So that's just an example of and I went through a very dark night of the soul, because then when my son did go off to school, I felt very lost and lonely. And I wrote a whole story in an anthology about this. And, it took it took many years and iterations even after that, and going through a few dark nights of the soul, when I woke up to this idea of like, I've known all along what it was, but I didn't say yes to it, and I ignored it, and all of those types of things, and I didn't honor all of my gifts and how that was going to express through me. And so this assignment and your gifts and your experiences weave together, and they do shift based on our ages and stages of life and our transitional times. And so I just wanted to, really share all of that with you today, particularly as we approach spring. I'm working this weekend. I have a class coming up that I will share down below, because there's still time to get in, but we're in a discernment period, a visionary period in spring to discern where we want our time, focus, and energy to go. And when we're in awareness of that compass point inside of us of whatever our assignment is, we make choices then in our visions and our dreams and our day-to-day lives that support that assignment and that we use to support others. So if part of our dreams and our visions and our work is to impact outside of our nuclear family and selves, then we use that assignment as a compass point to begin discerning where we want to put our time, focus, and energy. And so this timing of coming into awareness of this and being fully present and enjoying spring. I mean, I love spring. I think most people do, and especially those of us that live in climates where we're coming out of, the winter and coldness and all of that. And there's just, you feel the fertility, you see it out in nature. It's evident right in front of you. And we begin to feel that energy of wanting to bring things from inside outside. And so in the post for this week, which I'll also link below, there are some practices to come into some more clarity around what your assignment is. And of course, I'm open to spending a brief amount of time with you to see if I can support you in that way more deeply. I have a whole process that I take my beloveds through, and it's immersion process. Before I leave for today, I wanted to share a reading instead of a card the way I normally do, because I've been getting a lot of wisdom nuggets out of this book, and this particular reading really, I believe, applies to what I'm saying here. But it's Michael Meade, Awakening the Soul, a beautiful teacher, a mythologist, and I love my mythology and weaving that mythology into, our human life, into real story. And the other piece I just want to say before I start this reading is that, our lives, our experiences initiate us into stepping more and more into the assignment if we choose to look at both our shadow and light experiences in that way. What initiates us marks us indelibly, and what marks us can help initiate others. If we take off all the coverings we must wear to play our roles in daily life, what remains are those things that marked us and blessed us and continue to make us who we are inside. Certain events touch and confirm our inner realities as if there is an inner gradient or through line waiting to be found and followed. Besides the more predictable stage of life transitions, there are critical moments when we don't choose what happens, but we become the ones chosen. Something unseen and unexpected touches our lives, and we are changed in ways that can take time to unfold. As the inner dynamic of transformation, initiation means the continuous breaking open of areas of the soul to reveal hidden capacities and inherent gifts. When life pulls at us from the outside and the soul pushes us from the inside, we reach the point where pain and longing requires that we change. A true turning point in life threatens one habitual ways of being or acting on one level, but also opens the doors of perception on another level. We come to see the world as we are intended to see it and awaken the true aim of our soul. Life is change, and the life of the soul is transformation. An initiation involves entering a threshold where we can gather enough tension and momentum to push ourselves over to the next stage of our life. In that sense, initiation not only means taking a new step on the road of life, but also undergoing a complete change of life. Thus, stepping onto the path of initiation also means there's no going back. On the path of transformation, there can be no way back to the self-identity or sense of life we had before. And in some ways, that may be really scary. For me, I carry the archetype of that creating great excitement around me. And, each year as I go through this spring process, and I'll be sharing it in the class on Sunday, I also really look at, what wants to go, what is ready to go, and just, let it go. I'm done. I'm absolutely done with certain patterns or certain things I'm doing. And I get very truthful on what's not working, what wants to be preserved because it is, and maybe, presented in a different way. And then what is looking to be newly created and birthed. So I thoroughly, I like transformations and initiations. That just happens to be my comfort zone. And over the years, learning to let go of control and really embracing and honoring the mystery of life. So that is all I have for this week. I can't wait to join you again next week. Bye-bye.